All right, Eric, I think we can get started.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rachel. And hi, everybody. Welcome to our third edition of the Fall 2025 Career Speaker Series. I'm joined today by Kaley Cross, and we'll be talking a little bit more about waste reduction and sustainability in business. Just as a bit of housekeeping for those of us that are new to the Career Speaker Series, we'd ask that you please keep your microphone muted until we open up for Q&A towards the end of the session. Traditionally how we go about doing this is we'll break down and learn a little bit more about our speaker, run through some introductions, a little bit about their job title, their role, the company they work for, as well as some of their educational and early career experiences and sort of what brought them along the way towards sustainability, and hopefully learn a little bit more about what sustainability looks like in their company and within their role. And then we'll jump into questions from there, a little bit of a chat between Kaley and myself, and that'll go on for about 30-ish minutes, and we'll open the last 10 to 15 minutes up for questions from everyone within either in the chat or turn your microphone on and feel free to ask the question. And we'd love to get to hear some of what is really interesting you, and maybe just learn a little bit more from Kaley's own experiences as well. But without further ado, I can pass it off to Kaley to just give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself, your job title, your role, and maybe just a little bit about your educational experience as well.
Sure. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to have you all here. I'm Kaley. I am the Sustainability Manager at Grove Collaborative, where I lead waste reduction and sustainability initiatives for the company. Sorry. I did my undergraduate degree in environmental science at NC State University, and then I got my master's of sustainability studies through Lenoir-Rhyne University at their Asheville campus. What else did I miss, Eric? Sorry.
Oh no, it was pretty quick. Honestly, if you want to just maybe dive into a little bit about Grove as a company, just for some of us that don't recognize the name.
Yeah, for sure. So Grove Collaborative is a one-stop online retailer for everyday essentials. So thinking Amazon, but products that are healthier for your home and the planet. And sustainability and circular economy have been embedded into our mission since day one. We've been a certified B Corp for just over 10 years. So it's really core to who the organization is and kind of how we go about living out our values.
Awesome, and thank you for that. And just as an ask, you use the term B Corp, and I know we have some folks in the call that aren't necessarily as familiar with that as a term. Could you just describe it pretty briefly for us?
Yeah, for sure. So we are a certified B Corp and a public benefit corporation. So those are two different things, but a certified B Corporation is essentially a certification process that businesses can go through that show that they are aligned with kind of a triple bottom line approach to business. So thinking of people, planet, and profit equivalently to one another, opposed to having kind of profit sit above those other two pillars. And then a public benefit corporation is basically just the legal status for companies like certified B Corps to report out on their kind of ESG or environmental, social, and governance metrics, as well as their like revenue and financial reporting that they're required to do.
Oh, awesome, and I appreciate that. It's just, I know we're getting a little bit of a wider audience too, and it's always helpful to get those terms redefined for folks. But I know you went pretty quickly through your educational history and some of your degree path, but just for me, what drove you towards Grove as an organization to be a part of?
Yeah, so I think from the time that I started thinking about having a job and where I wanted to work, I always knew that I wanted to work at an organization that was doing good in the world and specifically in my area for the planet, but that's definitely evolved into like the people and profit category as well. But I knew that I wanted to work for a mission-driven organization. And so when I had the opportunity to join Grove. It's an organization that I've followed for many, many years. Actually, worked with them as a consultant at a previous role and knew that they really walked the talk. And so that's just always been a priority for myself and looking for jobs and organizations to work for. And so have been very fortunate to get to work for several kind of mission-driven organizations over the years.
Oh, awesome. And I really appreciate that. It's always good to see what really pulls people towards certain organizations. And I think it's helpful for the students listening just to get an idea of some of the other aspects that go into picking a company. But with that, I think we could jump into just my questions for you and go from there. But I think in one of your descriptions, just sort of talking about your own experiences and your work, you had talked a little bit about, well, like circular economy. And for some of our viewers, they may not have the kind of, background and experience in that sort of topic, but, in maybe like a quick description, could you maybe help us define what that means?
Yeah, so a circular economy is really about um, almost think of it like circular, like literally a circle. So it's taking what usually we call a linear economy or kind of a take, make, waste model, which is very linear. We design products or packaging, we use them, and then we throw them away to a closed loop system where instead of that product, ending up as waste in the end or that material, it's actually able to be reused or recycled into something that maybe it was before or something new, closing that loop. And so when we talk about a circular economy, it's really designing products and systems with without waste per se. So there's kind of always this re-entry of that material into the system again.
Oh, wonderful. And I guess could you maybe just tell us about something that involves the circular economy in your day-to-day work, or even just something that just excites you about the topic? I think I'm frankly interested to see sort of the passions that push somebody towards that kind of interest.
Yeah, for sure. I think what excites me about the circular economy right now is more of this a lot of companies working towards reuse and refill models for products and packaging. So where we're essentially able to purchase a product, we can buy a refillable version of that product, or maybe go to a local refill location and refill it and send it back for it to kind of be washed or recycled and reused. And I think that that is something that really excites me, being in the consumer products good industry. And for those who aren't familiar with that, it's like think of anything you would find in your grocery store essentially as a consumer product. And so, as an industry, we are just, quite wasteful when it comes to packaging. And so, finding these innovative models where we can reduce that, I think, is really exciting for us in our own packaging and products, but then also for the brands that we get to work with who are also innovating around these topics in their own product portfolios as well.
Awesome. And I apologize. I'm jumping around a bit, Kaylee, but we talked earlier about your interests and your experiences, but was there a light bulb moment that sort of directed you towards not only the field of sustainability but an interest in waste reduction, and if so, could you describe it?
Sure. I think it's probably twofold. So One, I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, where we, recreated in the mountains quite a bit. And as I got older, I really started to notice like the impact that litter specifically was having on our natural environment, but also the places we enjoyed recreating, hiking, biking, camping. And it was in particular one spot where we would go camping that actually got shut down due to the amount of litter that people had left in that camping location. And so then for quite a while, no one could enjoy that space because there was all of this trash that wasn't being managed properly and that needed to be cleaned up. And that probably was one of those moments where I was like, oh, okay, like this is a problem maybe that we can solve. And then when I got to NC State, I had the ability of living in the eco village where we had a presentation from the waste reduction and recycling office. And it was like this moment where I think Lonnie, who I think now is at the sustainability office, she mentioned that paper towels were compostable. And before that, I didn't know that. Like I was just, I don't know what it was, but it just felt like such a light bulb moment of like, oh yeah, of course they are. And yeah, why aren't we composting like every single paper towel that's like on this planet? And I think that's where like that kind of chain reaction happened of like, oh, okay, there is this problem. There are solutions and we can scale those solutions or build on those solutions. And thus, there's potentially a career in this space. I don't think I knew that at the time for sure. But was willing to kind of follow that topic area to see kind of what would happen.
Well, awesome. And just as a question for my own information, as currently an online student and somebody that didn't go to undergrad at NC State, what exactly is an eco village, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So an eco village is I don't know exactly how to describe it, but essentially there are these like villages that you can live in, which are just kind of like groups of dorms around a particular like topic or
Oh,
type of maybe degree area or something like that. And so ours was really focused on like environmental and social sustainability. And so we all like lived together and there was like some form of like a little bit of curriculum around um kind of those topic areas to introduce you to different pieces of like, sustainability now is such a big, broad term that we got little bite-sized pieces of all of those things.
oh, that is awesome. And yeah, thank you for indulging me on that. There are
Of
aspects that are,
course.
as an online student, I'm not as familiar with on physical campus. But I know you spent some time talking a little bit about your own corporate experiences, but I'm also under the understanding that you do have some community work that you do as well, and some work that involves aspects at the community level. Do you mind just talking a little bit about how those experiences relate, and maybe just a little bit of how some of the work that you do in the community can help to influence the work you do in your professional life?
For sure. Yeah, so I think that a lot of my work probably started at that community level before kind of getting into the corporate space. I graduated in 2020 during the pandemic, and so coming out of college into that environment, there weren't like tons of job opportunities. And so I really relied on some of that local, community type work to build that experience that I was looking to build. Um, Now, I think I serve on the board of Be Local Triangle, North Carolina, which is like the local chapter for the B Corp kind of movement that we mentioned earlier. Um, as well as serving as the volunteer programs manager for the Great Raleigh Cleanup, which is a local nonprofit that does a lot of work in litter reduction and environmental education work. Um, Sorry, I'm getting some background noise, but um, Yeah. Did that answer it, Eric? Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. I am realizing that could be on my end as well. I'm very close to like a road, so there
Oh,
might
no
be some
worries.
so I apologize, everyone. No, yeah, that's perfect. If you maybe could talk a little bit more about the organization you're a part of. What the current like workload looks like, or certain initiatives that you find exciting. I think that would be very helpful as well.
Sure, yeah. So with the Great Raleigh Cleanup, I serve as their like volunteer programs manager. So it's a lot of volunteer management, whether that's for events or um, individual volunteer opportunities. So part of that is overseeing our group cleanup program, which actually does include corporate cleanups. And so there is some of that like liaisoning with local companies and organizations that are also interested in giving back to their communities through, litter pickups and kind of employee engagement. Um, I also lead our kid cleanups, so I get to engage with a lot of like kids and do more of like environmental education, which is always really inspiring. And I think that has helped me a lot in my corporate job because it's like you really have to speak in basic terms to kids. And so it helps when I'm, speaking to others across the industry who also may need us to kind of dial back the jargon that we so quickly can get into in the sustainability space and explain things in a different way. And then it's a lot of managing partnerships, which I think has also, both in my corporate work and my community work is a big part of my job where, identifying partners and organizations that we can collaborate with to really push the industry forward. Versus being in a silo. And so it's having lots of those conversations with different partners around different topic areas. And then, building those partnerships. One at Grove right now, that's a great example of that is we just launched our packaging action network, and it's for consumer goods companies that sell on our site to participate along with Thrive Market. So that's, a competitor of ours that we're working pre-competitively with to help these companies set their own, plastic reduction and climate reduction or greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals to ultimately help us because in the corporate space, it's more about like, if you can support your supply chain in doing these things, ultimately it's helping you meet your goals. But that's been a lot of partnership work, a lot of liaisoning and building a program that, is working toward this universal goal.
Oh, I really appreciate that. I know you were talking about partnerships and working with other brands that are trying to integrate with the overarching site. Have you found any challenges in either getting buy-in within the organization or from those partnerships in moving towards more sustainable efforts?
Um, Currently, not as much because I think we work with a lot of mission-driven organizations, so we're very fortunate. But throughout my career, 100%, I think it's not always the priority for every organization or every business. I guess even now, we are seeing in the broader industry landscape that there are challenges with honestly having budget for a lot of sustainability initiatives. And so I think that's where this pre-competitive collaboration work is really important, where we can lean into how do we collectively try to solve a problem with as minimal resources as possible. Um, Really helps like everyone, reduce the amount of resources. But I would say, yeah, budgets tend to be, tight and slim. So that is a challenge that a lot of organizations are facing. But there are opportunities where, um, you know, these are strategies and solutions that can or have like meaningful ROI as well. So I think that is definitely something to keep in mind for a lot of these companies is how are they like proving that out is something that we try to work on as well.
No, absolutely. I think you make a great point regarding ROI or return on investment, as well as just, being able to communicate that, and where specialties like yours come into play is, having opportunities to be able to talk that through. But it is also really promising to see that the partnerships that are going on currently with Grove are helping to kind of move towards a joint goal. Um, and I know we've spent a good bit just about your professional and your community level organizations and involvement, but for a lot of the students here, do you have any recommendations on skills or either educational or professional experience or even just community experience that you think would be very helpful in in acquiring for students currently?
Oh gosh.
No
Yeah, I mean,
pressure, of course.
depends what the students want to do. I think there's, again, sustainability is such a broad topic that people can go into all kinds of different jobs. I loved this diagram once that I believe professor at Duke, Katie Cross shared, where it was like traditional on one spectrum of like company type and role, and then like sustainable on the other axis of like role and company. And so while I work in kind of the sustainable role and company box, there are people who work in more of like the traditional role and traditional company box that like are able to have an impact as well. And so those skills could look very different. Like it could be very like technical financial accounting or but I think that one thing that is kind of universally applicable to sustainability is just that like high level strategy of taking what are sustainability frameworks and approaches to different work streams and like integrating those into the work that you do. I always say that like while I don't want to work myself out of a job, I truly do think that we are moving to a place where sustainability is going to be the skill that every function of a business has versus the company having a sustainability person or point of contact that then is like integrated across the organization. And we've started to kind of see this shift because, again, it's like it really does touch every function of a business if you're in operations, like, and it's really about just being like resourceful. Like sustainability and resourcefulness, I think go hand in hand a lot of times. And so it's it's at a point where like there may be not tons of like technical skills, though like, if you're going to be a data analyst in this space, then like yes, for by all means, please know how to use Excel and Tableau and Power BI and some really, technical type of programming things. My job, fortunately, I can do okay in Excel and get by. Um, but if you want to go into marketing and communications, it's similar. It's just like understanding the technicalities of how sustainability interacts with the work that you're doing. So maybe then you care a lot more about the Federal Trade Commission's green guides, which is kind of like a technical framework on like communications and how we can communicate to consumers about sustainability efforts without greenwashing and things like that. So yeah, it's really broad. If anybody has any like I want to do this and what skills do you think would be helpful, I'm happy to try to support with that. But yeah, I think just understanding like how sustainability integrates in all the roles is the most helpful.
Absolutely, and I appreciate it. I know that's a heavy question to ask, but it's one that's been kind of a standard across all of the industries and sectors that we've had come in to talk to us for the Career Speaker Series. But within your role at Grove, and I'm of course going to add another curveball to the question I already asked. Within your role at Grove, do you have any skills that you think really kind of came in handy for you jumping into the the, the position?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of my position is around reporting. So we report our plastic footprint every quarter as well as annually, and some other kind of metrics around what our plastic usage looks like. And so I think knowing those frameworks and understanding how to do those, calculations or build out, workbooks where you're pulling data from all these different systems into one, because oftentimes, whether it's around plastic or carbon or your supply chain, the data doesn't sit in like the system that you need it to talk to the other data that you need to actually get the output. And so being able to like manipulate all of that has been super helpful. I would also say communications, writing, storytelling. So I support with our blog, which is really focused around educational content for our customers on whether that's environmental topics or human health topics. And so being able to synthesize information into a way that's digestible by kind of the average person has been really key. Um, Strong organization skills. Again, you're working with like every team in the organization. And so just being able to like keep all those things straight, I think is really helpful. And then, yeah, I mean, we also like for us, we do participate in like more technical reporting. So if you're kind of looking at going into the sustainable business pathway, we completed our carbon disclosure project report or CDP report last year. I had no experience in doing that, but gosh, I wish I had because it took me way more time to learn as I went. Though that is something that you can do, so don't stress out if you have no idea what I'm saying right now, because there is a lot of, learning as we go, evolution of policies and things that reporting frameworks that companies are required to kind of follow. So, just like being able to, I guess maybe I'll go back and say, being able to know where to find all that information is the thing that's made me the most successful. So it wasn't that I knew the information going into the role. And that's been true for a lot of the positions that I've held throughout my career. It's like not that I know, but I know someone that knows, or I know where to look to find the answer. And I think that that is really key. It's like you're forever learning. So school doesn't end when you graduate, unfortunately.
um, and I know you mentioned that sometimes it really is just being able to ask questions or find somebody that knows. And just to kind of expand on that, do you find that that's usually how you've been learning in your current role?
Yeah, for sure. Like, a great example of this is in the past year, a lot of companies have been subject to basically fees on their packaging. So any packaging that they send into a state by selling a product, they're required to report on. And this is like fairly new in the United States. And so it's one of those things was like, okay, like you got to figure this out by May of this year. And here's the policy that's, 200 pages long. And it's like, oh, that's going to take a while to read. And so I think it's like knowing the resources to learn that information. Like I was able to attend webinars that consultancies had around the topic to kind of streamline learning the information, or um, using different free resources and Excel workbook templates that people had shared online to prevent us from having to start from scratch. So I think it really is like, yeah, having those resources makes such a big difference. And that's like partially like just again following the right organizations, the right players in which industry you're interested in, and then networking with the right individuals. I also reach out to like people who are in similar positions at different companies to me all the time, being like, okay, like, how did y'all do this? Because I'm
Yeah.
very confused. Or can we work on this together? And it's a very like collaborative industry, I would say. And so people are always open to sharing resources or kind of workshopping or brainstorming through those new things that come up.
And I would say that networking is a superpower in and of itself. And I think in any industry, it is a big hill to climb, but it does really pay dividends to be able to know folks, to be able to ask questions, or just to reach out. So I really appreciate that, and I thank you for humoring me with the your answer. But I was going to ask you a little bit about some of your work with Circular Roots Consulting, and I had seen mention that you were a founder for the organization. could you maybe just jump into a little bit about, what maybe prompted that work, and maybe some recommendations and feelings regarding starting your own business or assisting with starting your own business, just for those of us that are interested.
Sure. Um, I never planned to first go into any kind of business. I'm the product of like an accountant and a banker, and I wanted to stay as far away from business as humanly possible when I went to school, and here we are. But I think that's where a lot of impact can be had. So anyway, um, it starting my own business was not something that I thought I would do. Actually, I believe it was Jessica Thomas, and I hope that I'm not citing this incorrectly. I met with her in like 2017, I think, when I was a sophomore at NC State in undergrad, and kind of was like spitting off what I wanted to do and different thoughts and things. And I just am like, wanted change to happen at a speed that it often doesn't happen at. And she was like, if you want things to happen that quickly, you're gonna have to own your own business. And when I started this, I was like reflecting back on that moment to be like, I had really struggled in working with some of the organizations I had worked with up until that point because of the speed in which I wanted things to happen. I was like, why can't impact just happen immediately? Like, here's how you do it. We know how to do it. Like, let's just do it. And so I think it was partially that and the mentality of wanting to do more, and partially, to be honest, not being able to find a full-time job doing what I wanted to be able to do. So I had become a very deep and niche expert in the space that I was in, which meant that like the pool of jobs was not necessarily a plethora. And so found that, in talking to people, they were like, well, why don't you just consult? Like, you're very knowledgeable about this particular subject matter. People need to know about it. But like, yeah, they don't have the resources to hire a full-time position to do this work unless you're, the Unilevers of the world or these massive Fortune 500 companies. And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I could do that. And so it started like that. Like I just, you know, put a name out there, have a very bare bones website, and started taking on contracts and contracted work from companies that were interested in doing more sustainability work, but didn't necessarily have the resources to kind of hire that full-time position. The long of the short is that I don't think I was necessarily cut out for being an entrepreneur either, because I am really bad at sales. So I did not want to go out and hound people and companies about like why they should work with me and like why they should do this work. Um, I just wanted to work with the people that wanted to do it. And so to be honest, that's kind of where it sat. It's been very much like somebody gets wind of, oh, Kaley can help them with this project, and I'll say yes, and I'll do the contract for them. Um, but it's been a lot less about like growing a business because I found that to make it financially stable for myself, I would need to do a lot more of that like business development side of the job. And I think, anyone looking to start a business, like have a revenue model, make sure you're willing to, like go out and sell and pitch what you're doing, because that is how you're going to, scale the business that you have, if that's what you're looking to do. But for me, it's very much so been like a side business. But I've gotten to work on a lot of really awesome projects and with awesome people because of it. So it was definitely a great supplemental while I was looking for like a full-time job.
And I really appreciate that. I guess as a follow-up, you had mentioned, having this desire to see change much faster than might be reasonable. In your time, do you feel like that expectation is tempered slightly?
Um, yes and no. I think depends what organization I've been with. When I've worked for organizations that are either a startup or kind of follow that startup mentality, there is that like very nimble, very quick decision-making processes that tend to push us in that direction. And I enjoy working in that environment because it feels like we can do more quicker. But I've also worked kind of at the opposite end of that spectrum where I was working for like a standard setting body, and because of the nature of the type of organization that is, it's like government. There's a lot of steps and protocols and processes that you have to follow. And so I think that experience really did kind of um, set that expectation for like some companies and some organizations, the speed at which things can happen. Um, and to be honest, that's where I've like filled my like community level work and in personal work into like my professional job as well. Like I think I can kind of lean into both of those at different times where like when my work worked at a slower speed, I was able to put more energy into like the board roles that I was in or the volunteer roles that I was in, and vice versa. Like when I worked for companies that required a lot more and did move at that like faster speed, maybe I pulled back on some of that other stuff.
No, and I appreciate that insight. I know you had talked about that intersection between a traditional organization as well as one that's already sort of involved in that sustainability sphere, and this is somewhat of a segue with that desire to see change in an organization involved. Um, do you have any recommendations for how a student or an early career professional could help to advocate for those changes in an organization? Or in your experience, have you seen any kind of like intersection or where that intersection might occur?
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone can be an advocate for this kind of work, whether it's in their company or in their position. If you find that there are solutions that, are identified, bring them up to people. I think a friend of mine worked at a lab, like a biotechnology kind of lab, and she was just really passionate about sustainability and was actually able to support their lab in having more recyclability efforts for some of their materials that they used in the lab, because oftentimes they're using so many of the same kind of materials, and those, were going to the landfill. And that's like not within her, job description per se, or in her scope of work, but it was something that she felt really passionate about doing and was able to kind of like advocate for that as a solution and talk to her manager and their manager and that kind of thing. So I think that it's definitely possible for people to do. If you're at larger organizations, sometimes there's like formalized eco teams or green teams where maybe the role for these individuals aren't specifically around this kind of work, but them as a group are trying to push forward some of these things. And so it's almost like a special project that you might work on in addition to the work that you do. But I definitely think it's possible. I think there's many examples of people who are not in a sustainability role, or even at an organization, to kind of bring change that they want to see within their own organization. And one could argue that that's almost more important, that we have, these advocates in organizations or functions where these topics aren't as top of mind, to bring them to the forefront, and to kind of bring more people into the conversation and businesses onto, recognizing that doing good is good for business, not just, for people and the planet, but really to, drive their business growth as well.
No, that's awesome, and thank you for that. And typically with these sorts of conversations, I do always like to kind of bring it more towards the personal or the sometimes the fun. But you're clearly involved not just in your work, but on the community level, as well as just some part or past experience with, starting your own business and working through that. And that's a lot of moving pieces. And, for those of us that want to keep ourselves running and to try to enact that change and to be those advocates in our organization. Personally, I'd love to know what keeps you from getting burned out and what keeps you, motivated personally.
Yeah. Well, I'd be lying if I said that I have not hit a place of burnout in my time on this journey. And I think that that's such a critical piece is really to know your own limitations and know how to balance these things because especially in the mission driven, impact space, burnout can hit you so quickly and sometimes you don't even realize it. Um, but a couple of things that like I personally really try to do is like physical exercise is really important to me. I've always been very active in sports, or now it's more like running and going to the gym as an adult. But I have really tried to continue to prioritize that in my own life because I know immediately as if I see that I'm not doing that, it's like, oh, like I cannot function and do what I want to be able to do. Um, I don't know, like reading and just like I think like being okay with like taking the rest when I do need it. Like I've become a lot more open with all like both in my like job as well as like a lot of the community work that I do, like just being real and honest with people when like I do need a moment or need more time to do something in order to like recharge. When I do take time off now, I've been really intentional about like truly being away. I used to very much so do the thing where you like take PTO or paid time off and like continue to check my email or like, oh, I'll do that one thing for you. Um, but I like have realized that like it doesn't help. You come back recharged. And so really taking like the time away to do that. But yeah, I think those things, as well as honestly, what really keeps me going is like the community of people that are in this space. Like genuinely, I have made some of my bestest friends through doing some of this work. And they, I think, keep us all going together. And so that does make it, easier to get up and want to do more or to do the work that we've kind of like outlined for ourselves. I feel like sometimes now, like if I go to a meeting for some sustainability related project or something that we're working on. It doesn't feel like a meeting. It's like a gathering of friends who are just like working to create a better place, which is super cool. And so it makes it a lot easier to want to do.
Um, Thank you for your candor regarding proper work-life balance and preventing burnout. I think it seems on its face a really basic discussion point. All of us understand that, oh, you can't, you can work as much as you want, or, I'm going to put in the hours and put in the time to complete a project or meet that deadline. But at the end of the day, it's a really big lesson to come away from that you can't just cram, I guess, or put yourself under duress for long periods of time without taking a break. And I can speak from my own personal experience. It's been a difficult lesson to learn when to take that break and to
Mhm.
actually make it meaningful. So I really appreciate hearing that from you.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think
but
from a job perspective, I heard a mentor of mine early on kind of say, um they had kind of like as there's seasons of change in the year, there's seasons of change in our lives, and there are times in our lives where we're going to have more energy and more ability to do certain things, and others where like we really need to focus on ourselves. And she was kind of telling me that like she had, started at a startup and worked really hard, really long, really built herself as a professional, and then kind of reached that point of burnout, and then went to an organization that was more local and community driven and really focused on just like herself and getting, back into a place where she was excited about the kind of work to do, and then kind of went back to like a happy medium of working for a larger corporation. But yeah, I like that kind of stuck with me because I'm like, okay, there are these times in our lives where like right now I have the energy to be able to do this, but there have been times where I've needed to like really scale back wanted to go more local or whatever to kind of balance things.
No, and I agree. I think it's a good way to say that there's like an ebb and a flow to the way your career moves. Um, and I think over the course of this conversation, we've been just discussing, different experiences and your own insights regarding your position and your role. But just on another personal note, if you could give your past self or your college self a piece of advice regarding either your career, your purpose, or your direction, what would it be?
Um, that the path is not linear, and that's okay. I think when I was a student, it had been ingrained in me that once I graduated, like I needed to get a job. And like I have been on this 20-year journey or 22-year journey to like become an adult and get a job. And that was what I needed to do. And so like and then I graduated at a time where like that was not going to happen. Like the world was just in a different place. And so I think that like being okay with the fact that like things may not happen in a time or in a way that I expected them to would probably be the advice I gave myself. I was joking with my sibling the other day because I haven't been at a job for longer than 2 years. I think the longest I've been at one job is like just under 2 years. And that's been okay. Like, I think initially I was terrified that like if I didn't get the like 2 to 5 years experience at one job, like how was I going to get the next job and how was I going to continue to progress? And really, I think the world has just evolved and we've like moved past that a little bit. And so I think, following your gut on decisions, like one of the organizations that I was at, I kind of had this feeling of like, I'm not really sure I should be here much longer and started, looking. And a week after I ended up leaving that organization, they had like massive layoffs that would have included my position. And so sometimes it really is just like following your gut and that's okay. Um, and kind of trusting in that and embracing all the opportunities that you have. I think I've told a lot of students that no opportunity that you have or job that you take will be irrelevant for the next. Like every experience you have is relevant and translatable in some capacity. And so really, you know, leaning into that and being okay with the uncertainty of like what's going to happen next if you feel that like the opportunity in front of you is right.
Absolutely. And I guess as a final like comment or note, I think for those of us that have been multiple listeners throughout the Career Speaker Series over the past like couple semesters or even the past couple of sessions, there has been an underlying theme of that sustainability can often be a winding road for either your career or you're getting multiple different forms of experience to just begin to get involved in that field. And I just appreciate that we keep kind of hitting that common thread in all of our conversations. But I know we've been gabbing for a bit, and I have a tendency to overtalk. So I wanted to open it up to our listeners, either through chat or just yell it out. But feel free if you have any questions.
We do have a question from Helen in the chat, specifically about Grove. So how does Grove deal with the carbon footprint of shipping and transportation?
I will be completely honest that I do not fully know. We have a great climate accounting or carbon accounting partner who supports with that process, and I will be figuring that out come the new year when we do our 2025 greenhouse gas inventory.
Thank you. Other questions? You don't have to put it in the chat if you don't want to.
How long I Sounds like it took a while for you to land at Grove. How many places did you try?
Um, I have probably been at 4 or 5 different organizations before Grove. Um, all of which I really enjoyed and brought different experiences. So I wouldn't say that I was like trying them as like, to get to Grove necessarily. Um, but yeah, a variety over the years.
Great question. I see another question. What kind of CFA is this? So, the CFA program is through the first year engineering program. So it's complementary field activities. So the first year engineering students are able to participate in different events that are related to sustainability. So this is really a knowledge building CFA for the engineering students. Great question. Do the compost bins in the bathroom actually get composted? That might be a better question for our university sustainability office folks that manage more of like the facilities stuff around composting. But I know NC State has a pretty robust like commercial composting infrastructure on campus. So I would imagine that all of the paper towels that you're using are definitely getting composted at NC State. And Lonnie gives us a thumbs up, and Meredith says yes. So there we go. Other questions? Oh, a long question. So when it comes to sustainability in business, are you confident in the ability for companies to make do with input from experts in the field? Or does that position come with too little influence, in your opinion, for sufficient response to climate change? Does that question make sense?
I will try my best, Roan, and if I do not answer your question, feel free to come off mute or rephrase maybe in the chat. Um, when it comes to sustainability in business, am I confident in the ability for companies to make do with input from experts in the field? Yes. I won't say that they always align and that this is people in business agree with what maybe sustainability experts are saying, but I do think that more and more they are looking to the experts to find solutions specifically that work at scale. Scientists specifically have had a lot of kind of impact in advising businesses on what solutions can work and will work at scale. So I think that the two working together are happening very actively. A lot of these kind of consortiums of different types of businesses also work with academics and scientists and experts in those fields to kind of inform that process. So maybe I'm more optimistic than most, but I do think that those things are working together.
Thank you. And a question from Lonnie. How did you as a student when you were at NC State influence composting slash paper towels? And how did that experience help you post graduation with your work?
Yes, thanks, Lonnie. So when I was at NC State, I did work on kind of the composting paper towel program. And I would say that experience helped me in a lot of different ways. Mm, I guess most helpful was like the data tracking and reporting. So we actually did a lot of data collection and reporting out of that data to track progress of that program while I was at NC State. And that is directly translatable into how we collect, track, and monitor progress of existing sustainability programs for businesses or nonprofits or different organizations. So that was really helpful. And then translating that information to talk to key stakeholders who were involved in the decision making. So when I was at NC State and we were doing this project, we had to meet with like facilities and some other departments I forget the name of right now, but like essentially anyone that touched like housing and different facilities that where bathrooms were present, and being able to present to them why this solution was working and how it could be scaled and why we were requesting the, resources we were requesting to help this program grow were important. And so that definitely helped. And yeah, I mean, my career journey started in the Office of Waste Reduction and Recycling as an intern at NC State. So I'm very grateful for that experience and being able to kind of put me on this trajectory to stay in the waste circular economy domain of sustainability.
Thank you for that question, Lonnie, and thank you for your answer, Kaley. I think it's a good reminder that at NC State, to like really embrace the think and do mentality, and the campus is, campus is a classroom. We actually have a program called Campus as a Classroom that's all about sustainability, but there's all kinds of opportunities across campus to make a difference, try something new. So if you see something that could be done more sustainably, like take initiative upon yourself to learn more about it, and that could turn into a project just like the paper towels did. I heard once upon a time the cafeteria used to have styrofoam plates. Now we have, all completely reusable dining materials to cut down the amount of styrofoam waste in the cafeterias. So innovation is right at your fingertips, students.
Yeah.
And
And I think that those experiences help you get jobs as well. Like I did several waste audits when I was on campus as part of my work in the waste reduction office. And then my first job out of college was doing a waste audit for Burt's Bees. And so it's like very translatable. And I think like by highlighting those experiences with future employers is a great way to show that you have like skills that are able to be applied immediately.
100%. And shout out to Lonnie and Meredith. They can tell you more about all of our waste reduction opportunities at state. I think we're out of time. I'll let Eric close it out for us.
Well, thank you everybody for your questions, as well as Kaley. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great evening, and we should have a recording uploaded shortly.